Welcome in, friends, to another edition of Sports from the Couch here on Mercado Airwaves. I'm your host, Mike Mercado. I want to thank you so much for making us a part of your day. Before we get to this latest segment from the latest edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM, we want to remind you can follow us all over in the universe. I'm on Twitter at Mike A Media, Instagram, Mike Mercado Media. You could be interactive with the show on Twitter at Couch Sports Talk and at Sports Cubicle TV. Like, rate, review, and share us on all major podcast platforms, wherever you get your favorite podcasts at Mercado Airwaves. Check out the video version of the podcast over at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network. We have swag over at teespring.com/Mercado Airwaves. And if you would like to get our weekly NFL picks, check us out at patreon.com/Mercado Airwaves. Now enjoy this segment from the latest edition of the Sports Cubicle on WCPT 820 AM with Dan Marver, Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, and myself, Mike Mercado.
You have to go back to December 11th, the last time the Illini lost a game. It was 83-79 to a ranked Arizona Wildcats team. Since then, they've rattled off 4 wins, had the entire team and staff come down with COVID, and went over the holiday season. They won their first 2 Big Ten games after the holidays, which now makes them 4-0 in the Big Ten overall. They beat Minnesota at Minnesota by a score of 76-53, and then came back to the State Farm Center to win 76-64 over Maryland on a night which they retired Ayo Dosumu's jersey, who brought DeMar DeRozan with him as the guest of honor with him that night. Now the Illini will have tough gauntlet after they played Nebraska this week, who sits in last place in the Big Ten. Illinois will have to go and play Michigan. They play Purdue at home. They go to Maryland, who's looking for revenge after this week. And then they have Michigan State and Northwestern, followed by Wisconsin, Indiana, Purdue, Northwestern, Rutgers, Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, and Iowa. It's a gauntlet in the Big Ten. The fact that the Illini are 4-0 in the Big Ten for the first time in a long time says a lot about this team. Kofi Cockburn right now, second in the nation in scoring, averaging 22 points a game. And he sits behind Keegan Murray from the University of Iowa, who's the top scorer in the nation. Says a lot about what's going on in the Big Ten. Things are looking good for the Illini. You're getting contributions from a lot of people, especially from Omar Payne, who's come up in the last 2 games when giving Kofi Cockburn a spell. Now, Kofi hasn't really been in foul trouble yet this season, but I have a feeling hello. Now, during the game against Minnesota, the play-by-play guy for the Big Ten Network, Corey Provis, said that during the shoot-around, Curbelo was, quote, up and down the floor working 5-on-5, and it was encouraging news for Curbelo, though there's no timeline for his return. Now, when Brad Underwood, the coach of the Illini, was asked about that, he was saying that most of it starts with the conditioning, and he's not one of those guys that wants to put a player in a position to fail or get hurt. And by not being in good shape and being back, he knows that there's a time frame that he was off, and they're going to bring him back accordingly as his conditioning and his situation continues to improve. If you remember, at the one of their preseason games, he suffered a concussion. He played a few games during the regular season this year, but didn't look all quite right, and he's been kind of suffering coming back from those concussion symptoms since that happened all the way back in November. Exciting time for the Illini. They got that tune-up game pretty much against Nebraska. Don't sleep on anyone in the Big Ten this year, and then they look to prove themselves against Michigan this Friday night at State Farm Center, January 14th. We'll be talking about the Illini as the season continues because they are likely to be a favorite when March rolls around.